Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington TTouch practitioner for animals and people. And this is Tristan, who is a Corgi. And we are here for another episode of Conversations with a Corgi. And today we're going to talk more about wraps. And Tristan is reclining because he knows we're not really talking about wraps on Corgis today. We're going to talk about using wraps on people. So many horse and dog owners have shoulder injuries from their animals pulling on them or from carrying heavy things and or just from life. And so it's people accumulate a lot of problems in their bodies, and it's no different when you are an animal owner. So why would you want to use a wrap on a person? One of the most important things is for posture. And as a physical therapist, I have used wraps often since we started putting them on people way back in the early 2000s to help people with their posture. And those include people who might have just had shoulder surgery, or people who are in an accident, or people who have poor study habits where they're sitting slumped over. So any of the many things that can give us poor posture. And of course that includes horseback riders who I have worked with for 40 years. I have used wraps on their shoulders, dating back to even before we started using wraps in TTouch work. As soon as I started using wraps on my horse's legs, it occurred to me that they would be useful to help a person improve their posture while riding. It seems that having pressure on either side of a joint really helps it become familiar with a proper positioning so that it changes your habits of holding yourself a certain way so that you have better posture. They are great for people who have either a very arched back where they're lifting up their chest and sticking their butt out like I was told to do when I was an early hunt seat rider. And it's also good for people who collapse in their upper body when they're riding or just in their life. And if you are a person who rides and you've got more weight in one seat bone than another, wraps can be really helpful. If you have a leg that doesn't seem to ever reach the stirrup and you chronically have to shorten and lengthen one side of your stirrup leathers, wraps can be really helpful on your legs to help with that, as well as some of the Sally Swift riding exercises that I used to do because like many people, I was born with a chronically short right leg, but driving can really shorten the psoas on that side, that muscle, and make it so that when you get on your horse, your right leg never seems to quite come to the stirrup. If you ride without your stirrup on that side for a while before you start really riding, it can help lengthen your leg and position you evenly on the horse. And adding a wrap to that leg can also make a big improvement. People wearing wraps feel more secure and balanced and elastic while they're riding, and they don't have to do anything. And that is the secret to good riding, is to do nothing. And it's really hard to teach a person to do nothing because our whole system of riding in this country is do this, lift this, move that, pull that, kick that. And so it's not even this country, it's pretty much worldwide, but riding is getting you in a postural alignment so that your horse has the least interference to do anything you're asking him to do. And a lot of times when horses have been called resistant, it's because the person is perhaps, like for instance, sitting on just the left seat bone and then trying to get the horse to get a lead when he's cantering, and the person's body mechanics are keeping the horse from having any possible way of doing that. So wraps can be really helpful, especially if you're working by yourself and you might have Sally Swift's book and not much other information on how to help yourself. This can help you if you are aware that you've got a problem. And a problem can be not that yourself have a problem, but that your horse is having a problem. So you need to change something in your body so that your horse can do what you're asking him. People who work in offices or any kind of a job with repetitive motion often have tension and asymmetry in muscles in their body, and that can create problems in your neck and shoulders and your back, and wraps can be really helpful for that. Also, postural exercises can go a long way with the wraps to reducing wear and tear on the joints in your body. And for instance, one of the most common things that I as a physical therapist see is people who sit and work with their head way out in front of their body. I can't even do it for a minute because it hurts me. But If you are a person who does that, you have tremendous strain on the joints in your neck and shoulders and back. Your head weighs between 15 and 20 pounds, depending on the size of you. And that amount of weight pulling forward really puts a strain on your whole body to keep you from tipping over. So it's really important that your head be in alignment with your body, because if your body is properly aligned, just like when you're riding and you don't have to do anything for your horse to be different, if your body's properly aligned, it includes almost no muscular effort to maintain that postural alignment. And Feldenkrais and physical therapy and many Alexander technique, many things focus on yoga, many kinds of yoga, focus on getting you to be in that proper alignment so that your body has less wear and tear on the joints to hold you in that correct posture. And the body wrap is part of that. Body wraps can improve your coordination, your mobility, and your balance. Many people have reported, and I've seen this with some of my patients, when they have a body wrap on, or particular wraps especially, a person's balance is better. And as a physical therapist, there are many balance testing tools that we use, which is really just a list of questions and exercises that the person has to do. And with the wrap on, the person does better than with the wrap off. And I have tested that both ways, doing it with the wrap first and then doing it without the wrap, and doing it without the wrap and then the wrap, to try to minimize any kind of learning that might take place where a person's body is practicing those particular things, so that it's not just because you're doing the balance program twice that you're getting better at it, so that I can make sure the wrap is really making a difference. I've done it on different days. I've done it with people after strokes, with Parkinson's, with knee problems, and the wrap really does improve your balance. And it gives you an awareness of all of the parts of your body, which is something that a lot of us, especially if you have pain in a joint, or an area of your body, you stop thinking about it sometimes, or that's the only thing you think about and the rest of your body's been forgotten. So it's really important to keep your body connected. Another thing that wraps have been really useful for, and I haven't used them so much with this, but sometimes, is for people with vertigo. Vertigo and any kind of inner ear problem can be helped by a wrap. And I have a client now who's doing really well, but she has a kind of inner ear problem. She has Meniere's disease, which leads to dizziness and nausea and lack of balance and coordination. And I have not suggested trying a wrap, but usually there's a flare-up in the winter. Hopefully this year there won't be. But if there is, I may suggest trying a wrap, because I haven't used a wrap for that particular ailment. Other people with vertigo, for instance, I have people that are afraid of, even elderly people that are afraid of climbing a set of 9 stairs, because at the top of the stairs they have a fear of heights. And I have used wraps for things like that. It's been very effective. And it's also useful to use wraps for things like hip replacements and knee replacements, and surgery in any of the main joints in your legs, because often you end up standing with your posture all shifted to one side to take pressure off of that joint replacement side, and that can lead people to have vertigo, as your ears and eyes are trying to keep yourself so that your eyes are level. And our body tries all the time to keep our eyes level, and so whatever you have going on will go zigzagging up your spine, even if it means twisting your neck 6 ways to keep your eyes level. And so the wrap can really help people find a more neutral balance, so that they aren't having to shift left and right all the way up their body to keep their eyes level. The other thing that wraps are great for is postural tension and tension patterns in your body. If you have had an injury, or you do some kind of repetitive work or hobby, your body can develop tension patterns that can be really painful and can get a lot worse if you have like a really bad week of work, for instance. Or if you're sitting at the computer and you don't manage to get yourself in a good postural arrangement when you do that, 4 hours later you have a lot of problems. Wraps can really help prevent that, and also help address recovery from sitting for a long time with poor posture or an old injury. I have 2 broken collarbones from my 2 horses, and they never healed. They're just sort of floating in there. They have One has a bit of a cartilaginous bar and the other isn't completely not connected to the other end. And so for me, wraps have been really useful in different times when I've had jobs that require a lot of lifting of people, or if I've been doing a lot of yard work. Sometimes a wrap around my shoulders can really help my collarbones go back to a place where they're more functional without hurting me. You know, you can't just be like a chiropractor or something and jump on my shoulder and move my collarbone. But the wraps gently realign my posture. And so that's really helpful for that kind of an injury. And I found wraps really useful for strains in the ligaments and tendons in the forearm, as well as any kind of, like when I pulled my hamstring in my leg this winter, wraps were really useful for that. Calf pulls, wraps are really good for. Restless leg syndrome, we've used wraps for. And people feel, with the wraps, they feel a sensation of melting and relaxing around the areas of the body that the wrap covers. Wraps can reduce stiffness and tension in the jaw, neck, head, shoulder, the whole upper body, wrist, back, hips, ankles. It really can help you find an alignment that is more functional and less painful than whatever pattern you've developed to compensate for injuries and pain in your life. And they've also even helped people increase mobility in these joints. I've used wraps for people with things like trigeminal neuralgia and jaw problems. I treat a lot of people with jaw problems, especially when I was working in outpatient therapy. The jaw is really related to the hips, and so to address a jaw problem, you need to align the hips and then also go back and address any pain and inflammation in the joint of the jaw. So using a wrap around the jaw has helped people be able to open their mouth and keep the jaw straight. A lot of times the jaw will shift to one side when there's been a long-term dysfunction. So wraps have been super helpful for that. We've used the wraps for migraines, arthritis, frozen shoulders, people with cerebral palsy, Parkinson's disease, MS, osteoporosis, just a whole list of things, and pain in any part of the body. And I personally have used wraps a lot with people with strokes or post-strokes. On the affected side and on the unaffected side, I have used the wraps to increase the connection between the two sides of the body in recovery from a stroke. I have tested and had colleagues watch people walk with and without a wrap after a stroke, and the affected leg is always, always better with the wrap, and the person seems to have a more coordinated, symmetrical gait. I cannot emphasize enough, if you're listening to this, please tell any OT or PT that you happen to come across, hoping that they would be interested in alternative therapy, if you are, to use the wraps for people with strokes, or if you have a loved one or relative with any kind of thing going on, even 10 years out after a stroke, wraps can be super, super useful. I cannot emphasize that enough. And we've also used the wraps for people with head injuries, and there's been a bit of a test research project for that, using wraps to improve balance for people with head injuries, and using a body wrap, a particular type of body wrap, which we can't show today, but that has been really useful for people with head injuries and loss of balance. When I was working at therapeutic riding places, I really like to put a wrap on the person before I put them on the horse, just to bring them into their body a little bit. It's really useful for people who are high functioning, for dancers and athletes. Wraps can be really helpful to understand the way you're moving and improve symmetry and balance in the muscles. So wraps are not just for people who are hurt. They are also really useful for high-level athletes. I've worked with some top gymnasts and dancers and seen remarkable improvements in their mobility and flexibility and recovery by using the wraps. Now, I have to say, with some of those people, it's been really hard to get them to keep the wrap loose enough because they're so used to using a tight wrap. And what we're doing with our wraps is not the same thing as wrapping a joint really tightly when you have a sprain or a strain. This is a looser wrap because it's just giving feedback to the body and proprioceptive information to the joint. So it's not the same as wrapping your ankle after you've had an injury. And a lot of athletes are used to that. So when I show them how to use a wrap, they put it really tight. So it's a real experience trying to help them understand how loose it needs to be. They say that the wrap should be, you should use about 1/3 of its great of its maximum tension when you're wrapping a person. I usually even have it looser than that. Wraps can be really useful for people with emotional insecurities and emotional problems, agoraphobia, fear of going outside, stage fright, fear of spiders, test anxiety, any kind of PTSD, because wraps work the same way as the now famous squeeze pen that Temple Grandin wrote about, that she found helpful, like putting herself in a tightly confined area really helped her feel more secure when she was feeling out of control. And she learned this from the way they treat livestock to keep them calm. They have a pen that they squeeze them through. So wraps work in a similar way, we think, in that it does provide some comfort by giving you a sense of your boundaries, just like it does with an anxious or fearful dog. So if you are a person who is fearful of any number of things, like maybe driving your car after you've had a bad accident or even seen one on TV, wraps can be really helpful to reduce your anxiety when you get into the car the next time. And many other things. I've used wraps for lots of emotional issues and been really successful with that. Wraps are effective for so many things, and you don't need to know a lot to get them on yourself. And there are a number of ways I've been able to manage to get them on myself without someone to help me. And, most of us are in that situation when you're having a problem. So the wraps that we use are the Red Label Ace wraps. And make sure you get those because the other ones are too short or too flimsy or they don't hold up to repeated wear. So if you're a dog person that was even just at our Tellington TTouch class in Rockville, Maryland, and you want to get wraps, make sure you get the Red Label Ace bandages. And a lot of people have had good success finding these online. You can get them in drugstores, but there's a lot of red on the wrap box as it is, but it has to be the Red Label. That's like the name of it, the Red Label Ace Wrap. It's their best one. So again, make sure you're using really light pressure. You want the wrap to be, just in contact, and not so loose that it's drooping, but that it's continuing to keep that contact. So getting it the right tension is a good thing. And people tend to over tighten the wraps when they first are using them on people. I just want to caution you, put it a little looser than you think if you have a tendency to put it too tight. The nervous system in an animal or person will habituate, meaning that becomes accustomed to something and it stops being effective after about 20 minutes. So you should leave the wrap on around 20 minutes because after that point the body is getting used to it and it's no longer providing that neural input we like that helps change whatever it is we're using the wrap for. Sometimes you can leave the wrap on for way less time than 20 minutes, and certainly I have left it on me for even 4 minutes and felt a change. And really you have to let yourself be the gauge. If you start to feel uncomfortable in it, take it off. You can always put it back on, put it on more loosely, more tightly, shift something. We often recommend wraps for people who are having a headache. And I myself know when I'm having a headache, any kind of touching on my head can make me nuts and it really hurts. And I have tried wraps on my head while I'm having a headache and, I've left them on for about 2 seconds. So, or sometimes I put them on and have had to put them really tight and then I go ripping them off. So if in that case, you have to be really aware of yourself or the person you're working with when you're putting a wrap on them about how long you keep it on them. The same as you would with your dog. You do not put your dog in a wrap and leave him there for 3 hours. You need to take it off after a few minutes, about 20 minutes usually. And, Tristan certainly has worn some wraps in the car for a little longer than that. And I've seen him take the head wrap off, but leave the body wrap on when it's been on him longer than that. So just be aware of that. And you can wear a wrap longer than 20 minutes if you would like to. A lot of people in the afternoon at work, if they have an office or they're typing or they're sitting at a computer, will leave a wrap on their shoulders for much longer than 20 minutes just to keep their posture upright when they're tired and distracted and the day has seemed too long. A wrap on your shoulders can be really helpful and it will change your posture and then continuously remind you to keep that new posture while you're working. So it is definitely possible to wear the wrap longer than 20 minutes. just a couple of other points. If the wrap is not working, it's not doing anything, or it's really uncomfortable, just take it off. Or take it off and put it on again in a different way. Wraps are to increase your body awareness and your spatial awareness and your proprioception and your balance and muscular symmetry. If it's not doing those things, try a different wrap. Try a different size wrap. Put the wrap on another way. Just experiment, because your body is going to give you the information you need about whether or not that wrap is the right thing for you in that moment. So be aware of how your wrap is working for you. When we are doing the wrap with people, and I'll show you a picture of this, you can get from the TTouch.com website a book about wraps for people. Actually, I should show you the cover. It's all wrapped up for you. And if you have any number of problems with your body, or you think you might like to try using wraps on humans, I would definitely recommend getting the book. It's got a really good research project in the back about wraps and other things that is super good reading. The other thing that the book has down here, you see this thing, the empowerment scale. And that is just a scale of 1 to 10 that we use for people to give feedback to us when we're putting wraps on them. Now, I'm just assuming today that you're wrapping yourself, but if you're going to wrap your children, you want to use this feedback empowerment scale. So a 10 is the best that you can have, and that's a wow. And this comes from the dressage scores of 1 to 10. So a 10 would be phenomenal. That means your wrap just feels better than anything you imagined. And the 1 is so low, it's intolerable. You'd have to take it off. And I'll just quickly run through the numbers. Again, I'm assuming that today you're not wrapping your children and your husband, you're just wrapping yourself. So you won't need this as much. But you can think in your own mind, is this only a 4? Maybe I should try something different. So the 1 is intolerable. The 2 means stop. The 3 means not acceptable. The 4 is questionable. The 5 is okay. And is okay good enough? Not really, most of the time. The 6 is interesting or fine. The 7 is fairly good. 8 is good. 9 is very good. And the 10 is a wow. So keep that in mind and encourage a person that you're putting the wrap on to give you feedback using this scale. And certainly when I've been working with wraps with people, or even just doing body work on them at the place where I used to work on in inpatient physical therapy, this particular scale, I didn't always call it the TTouch Empowerment Scale, but I used this scale a lot to get feedback from patients about many things, not just TTouch. And it is really useful because it has a wide range, and 5 is just okay. 5 isn't like, no, that's pretty good. 5 is okay. So, if I'm doing something and the person is only okay, I want to get better than that. And so I have to think of how to change this or how to shift it or what to do differently to get them past that okay. So I've used it a lot. It's a really good scale. I really like it. And I'm grateful to Linda and Robin for developing it. So today I'm just going to show you one wrap because there's so much information about wraps you needed to learn. Hi, Tris. He says, I'm not getting wrapped. He has been scratching this morning, and I just don't know what the tick status is out there, but it's not good. I found another one on him yesterday when he went out for even just a minute. Quick pee-pee. He's banned from the whole yard now, and we've had more rain and more moisture. It's perfect tick weather. So I'm going to just show you what wrap that we use on the head on the occiput, and I have found that this is really useful for posture. Of course you would try this for a headache, but for me, when I do a lot of gardening or weeding, I get really tight at the top of my head at the occiput. It's where your head meets your neck. That's where the junction is between your occipital bone, which is the bone in the back of your head, and C1, which is your first neck vertebrae. I'll show you on British Corgi because he happens to be here. It's going to be right here. You have like a bump there. And actually, you can usually feel on yourself a bit of a dent right in the middle of the occipital bone. And on Tristan, it's right in this area. And I have a lot of hair, so you can't see on me, but it's right in the top of your neck here. Your occiput meets your neck. So this is the occipital wrap. And you can do this with either a 2 or a 3-inch wrap. I'm using a 2-inch wrap, and I'm using a yellow one, so hopefully you can see it because it won't blend with the purple too much. So this is good for neck strain, eye strain, and any pain that radiates in the temple. In this area, that's the sphenoid bone under there. And it's really good for people that have a high vagus nerve tone, because the vagus nerve goes behind the ear, and this wrap is going to be coming past your ear. And what that means, if you're in a state of sympathetic response where you're hyper and stressed and, you know, just emotionally on edge and, you know, have digestive issues, and you're in that state of, you know, fight or flight a lot of the time, this wrap actually would be really helpful for that. So if you've had like a really big meeting planning at work and you came home and you just can't relax because maybe it didn't go quite the way you wanted it to, this would be a good wrap to try in that case. It's also really good for any problems with your jaw, because your jaw just really hangs off your temporal bone, which is under your ear hole. Your jaw is just a hinge there. And so this does not cover your jaw. And for some people with jaw pain, covering the jaw can be really stressful, and that does not help the jaw pain. So this wrap goes over where the jaw connects to your body in its little joint where it connects to the temporal bone, and it can be really helpful for jaw problems. I have used this wrap a lot. It's one of the ones that I use pretty often because it's not hard to put it on. It can make a lot of good changes in a person. And, you know, I've even tried this myself when I'm doing yoga poses as I'm getting older. I had a yoga teacher say, you're going to lose every pose in your body that you can do as time wears on. And his yoga teacher told him that. I was kind of alarmed because I do know a lot of ladies in older years, much older years than me, in their 80s, who can still do every pose they could ever do and have way more strength than I've ever had. But for myself, I've used this wrap because I often have a headband with me in yoga class, especially years ago. And so I've used this wrap and found that when a yoga pose is really hard for me, this wrap just gets enough relaxation in my body that I have less fascial tension in my body. This is probably because of the effect on the vagus nerve. And then I can do the pose a little more easily. So this wrap, it doesn't look weird when you have it on. It can be a good one to use for a lot of people. Maybe a runner might be able to get a little more endurance trying this. If anybody out there is a runner, try this and let me know. And who's to say that the headband that you might be using for sweat wouldn't be also useful. So as I said, I've used this wrap primarily for me with gardening because my neck gets really sore from gardening. I'm in all these crazy positions, and whenever I'm weeding, it's putting a strain all the way up my whole arm. So I get really tight in my occiput, and it's also good for raking, which is part of gardening. So I use this, I would call it my gardening wrap if it weren't called already the occipital wrap, but it is really good for gardeners. Or if you're carrying a lot of heavy things or doing close work looking down. So this wrap is pretty easy. You're going to start on your forehead, and as I've said, where you start the wrap makes a big difference in how easy it is to put it on you. Now obviously, it's just going to go twice around your head. There's a lot of different ways you can do that, but this is the easiest way. So I start with 1/3 of the wrap going around your forehead, and then you take the short end, the longer end comes around under the back of your neck. Let's see if I can do this neatly without help and without sticking to myself. And you're just going to go under your occiput right here and use that first wrap around just to support that. Then you come up and cross the one you've just had on your forehead. There we go. There we go. And then around the back again. And I have a very little head, so I have lots. And then you just use the Velcro. So it should cross in the back so that you've got one piece right on the part where your head bulges out and the other one right on the OA or the occiput. And I don't know if, can you guys see that? There's one here at the top of my neck, and this one's kind of supporting my head. So that's the occipital wrap. It doesn't look too pretty with my hair like this, but I've used a purple one sometimes when I'm somewhere, and it really blends in. People would hardly even notice it, especially if I had it decorated. So again, with this wrap, if you're wearing it for a little while, it might start to feel too tight. So I encourage you to just loosen it to where it feels comfortable for you. You can fasten it with a safety pin. I really prefer a Velcro for this, or even just tucking it in. And as I said, I've used this a lot after I've done gardening and in yoga. It has really helped me get to poses that were hard for me. And it's pretty simple. You want to make sure it stays in place without feeling tight. That's how you know when the tension is good. And for me right now, I would, on my empowerment scale, I'll give this a 7. I'm feeling a little bit too much pressure right here where it attaches because it's kind of pulling. So I might just back that up a little. So now it's on my third eye. That might feel better because it's actually connecting with a part of me. So that's one simple wrap that you can use on people and that I've used quite a lot. And I will show you some more people wraps over the next couple of days. We will be going to the beach on Friday. I don't know if we'll do our Facebook Live. Well, we'll do it sometime on Friday, but I don't know what the status will be with our packing before we hit the road to go down to the beach. It is going to be 60, sunny, not raining at the beach, but it is not like a tropical vacation. It never is around this time of year in New England, but it's just nice to get away, and I love the waves and the sand and the beautiful long walks Tristan and I can take, and it really is dog heaven down there on the beach in the mornings when the tide is out and the dogs are running and running with everyone playing. It's such a joy for the dogs. And I have some friends that are going to be down there. We'll be having some nice dinners and lunches together. And another friend is doing some concerts, so I will be going to those as well. So it's going to be a really fun weekend. And Tristan and I are looking forward to it. So we will continue with our Facebook Lives over the weekend. Hopefully I will get it close to the 9:30-ish time that we do on weekends. But as I said, on Friday, in 2 days, I don't know what time I'll do it. It might be earlier, it might be later. Just depends on how the packing's going. I've had a lot of clients call me this week with kind of emergency situations in their dogs and horses, and it's often related to the ticks being so bad. It turns out, dog after dog is testing positive for anaplasmosis, Ehrlichia, Lyme disease, and many dogs, like my neighbor dog last year, are testing positive for 3 or 4 tick-borne diseases at once, and the ticks are just so bad this year. Luckily, we've been able with the cedar to get them on Tristan before they've attached. I think he's only had 2 or 3 really attached to him, and only 1 or 2 of those was there for a long time because I pet him a lot and I can feel them. But the ticks are just really, really bad this year, and I personally do not want to get Lyme disease. It can really be devastating, and I know lots of people whose lives have just been upended by a long-term undiagnosed case of Lyme disease. So we are staying away from those ticks. And I saw the crows in my yard yesterday eating whatever they could find in the short grass, and ticks would be one of those things. And so I just left them out there. Tristan and I didn't go out. We stayed away from the windows, anything we could do to encourage the crows to stay in the yard. And one of my neighbors down the road has some chickens. I don't have a truck anymore, but boy, I sure would love to turn those chickens loose in the yard for an hour or two because they love ticks. And I still may approach the lady and see if I could bring some of the chickens up. I think her husband's got a pickup truck, and just let them loose in the backyard, and we'd have to wrestle them up at the end of the day. And I'd, of course, have to sit out there with them to make sure nothing ate them, because yesterday at about 5 o'clock when I was driving out in my car to go to the store, lo and behold, what trotted across the road in front of me but a very healthy fox. And they do love their chickens. And he stopped just to the side of the car. I didn't have my phone with me, so I could not take his picture. But boy, just a picture of health. You know, the people say when you see one at 5 o'clock, that's a sign they have rabies. But look outside. It is so cloudy. It still feels like the morning if I were a fox. So I have to be super careful if I am taking care of someone's chickens for the day to make sure that the fox doesn't get them. And I haven't seen my bunny friends. Hopefully they haven't become dinner because I do love the yard bunnies so much. So this is Sally Morgan and Tristan Corgi, who's over here. Are you leaving? For another episode of Conversations with a Corgi, where we talked about using wraps for people. And remember, you're getting the red label wraps. You can dye them yourself. We just use RIT dye, I think, usually. If you'd like to have some pretty colors to use on yourself and your family. And it really is helpful. I have found it super helpful. And I don't know if I can convince my sister to put some wraps on my dad. I didn't leave any down there, but maybe when I go in the end of June, I will. He has Parkinson's disease. He has some trouble with his gait. And he, as part of that disease, is very skeptical about a lot of things. So he might not let us put a wrap on him. But it would actually really improve his gait. And my mom might be able to convince him to do it. But with so many things, it takes, if somebody wants to get up and take a walk, you have to then get them to hold still a minute to put the wrap on them. It's not as easy with a loved one as it was for me working in a nursing home or an outpatient therapy. When people come to me and say, I need help, and I say, try this, and they're like, great, that's different than what someone else has done. Maybe it'll work better. So try some wraps for yourself. If you're a rider, it can be really, really useful to recover from all of the injuries you sustain when you're riding, carrying buckets and tack and hay bales and grain and getting your arm pulled by the horse and getting on and off of a horse, and maybe you've had some falls. Wraps can be really useful for riders. So we will continue talking about wraps on people, and we will see you again tomorrow, but we're not sure. Oh, tomorrow is Thursday, so we'll be here at about 8:25. Thanks for joining us today, and get some wraps and see how they work on you. We'll see you later. Biscuit. You want a wrap? Have a great day.